Hello and welcome to Off the Tangent podcast with me, Zak Bream. Today I'm joined by an old friend, one that I share a lot of interest with, like motorsport, racing. So he's going to join me today. We're going to kind of go over his background in motorsport in general, with from MotoGP to motocross to karting and that sort of thing. So welcome to the podcast, Brandon Dyer. How you doing?
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for having me on. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm doing very well myself, thank you. So let's just jump straight into it. I think I wanted you to sort of tell me how you first got into racing. I think you mentioned to me in the past that sort of your dad was really interested in racing himself. Do you want to tell me a bit about that and maybe how it got you into it?
So yeah, it's basically all my dad's influence. So he did drag racing in the 90s and 80s, and when I was 5 at Christmas time, he surprised me with a motocross bike. So the adrenaline for speed already started there, I suppose. And ever since then, I've just been into cars, bikes, anything with an engine, really. So yeah.
You mentioned your dad did drag racing. Was that in cars or was that bikes?
All bikes. My dad's proper bike guy. He's built bikes in sheds, and he's just all bikes, really. But he likes cars as well. But his main speciality has always been motorbikes.
Yeah, you showed me his bike in the garage. It's pretty mental. Didn't he build it himself from scratch?
So basically, the engine from that bike was from one of his drag bikes, and that engine used to have nitrous on it, and it was 300 horsepower, and it could do quarter of a mile in 8 seconds or something ridiculous. And when he stopped doing that, he put that engine into a custom frame and made a custom bike. So yeah, hopefully one day I get to ride it, but 200 horsepower with no traction control ABS seems pretty dangerous to me. But
it does seem quite scary, and also the fact that you can just see all the frames just welded together.
Yeah, it's got a turbo on it as well. It's literally fucking coffin on wheels, but yeah, it's mental.
So do you think, did he do drag racing in that bike, or was that more he would go to bike meets and stuff like that?
He mainly built that to take it to bike shows. It wasn't a magazine. That magazine isn't a thing anymore. They basically have topless women and cool bikes next to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been airbrushed. It's got a very cool paint job on it and everything.
Yeah, very cool. So your dad was into bikes, and then he bought you your first bike when you were 5 years old. How do you think your mum felt about you getting a bike at 5 years old? Do you think she was how do you think?
I remember her being very nervous about me hurting myself, but I think she knew it was inevitable with my dad, really, and it was a matter of when and not if. So yeah.
He probably wanted to get you on the bike when you're 3 years old, and she was like, "Nah, you gotta wait."
Yeah, the muscle memory, the Project Valentino Rossi, if you want to call it that. But yeah.
So Valentino Rossi, you've mentioned him a few times to me. He's a MotoGP bike racer, isn't he?
Yes, so he's seemed as the greatest of all time because he's won 9 world championships, and he did it over a long period of time. He retired at 40 years old or something like that. And yeah, he literally won championship after championship years after a row and whatever.
I was quite surprised because the other day we were watching GT3 racing, and there was he was in those races.
Yeah, I suppose it's less demanding on the body, that sort of thing, and he still loves motorsport, and he just didn't want to stop. So if you're in a position to do that, I would have definitely done the same. I bet he's having the time of his life at the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So let's get into, so you got the bike when you're 5 years old, and did you immediately start going to sort of races? What was the process after you got that bike?
So my first bike was a 50cc small wheel bike, and then I got a 50cc big wheel, and I did races for about 2 years, and then my dad got a new job, which means he had to work on the weekends, so it was kind of phased out from there. So the dream ended pretty early, but I'm still thankful for the opportunities that he gave me, and I'm still do races here and there, but just for fun sort of thing.
Yeah. So did you go to races back then? Do you remember how old you were when you went to the first race?
I was probably about 7 years old, and I did it to about 9, and then he got a new job, which meant I couldn't do it anymore. But I still went at the weekends when he was free and just did practice days from from there to about 13 because I had a 65cc and an 85cc after that as well. And then my engine seized at a practice day and I stopped it for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And in that period, I did a bit of go-karting as well.
So what was the race days sort of like for motocross? Was it so for like kind of explain to people what motocross is and then like what a general like sort of race weekend might look like and other people doing it as well.
So if you're just counting one class, you would have a practice session, a qualifying session, and then two 20-minute races. So they're called Moto 1 and Moto 2. And after the two races, the person with the most points in those two races wins the whole overall, if you will. So in motocross, you always have two races, but obviously in car racing, it's mainly just one big long race. And I think it's because motocross is so intense, you literally, after 20 minutes, you're dead already. And like, you need to stop basically because it's so like hard on the body, really.
Yeah, because it's like those sort of like dirt tracks where you're doing, and there's like, I don't even have, it's almost like ripple sort of like track where you got to go across it. It's so bumpy.
Yeah, they're called ruts. So like, as the day goes on, these ruts get deeper and deeper, and like the track just gets more physical as the day goes on, where obviously people riding the mud gets churned up and stuff like that. And the type of mud as well can determine like how the track forms. So like in the UK, it's mainly called hard pack. So that's when you get like the big ruts and stuff. But in like somewhere like Spain, it might be more sandy. So it's like, yeah, on sand, you can just like basically full throttle everywhere and you don't have to worry about them because it just moves where the bike goes.
You showed me the other day, like you showed me some videos of motocross. It was like the first time I really watched it. One thing I noticed was that when, like, let's say you're going up a hill and doing like some sort of jump before you land, I noticed that a lot of them were like leaning to the side. It almost looked like they were doing some sort of trick. Is that a like tactical thing you're supposed to do when you do a jump, or is it just like for it looks nice?
So how that came about was this guy called James Stewart. He started doing it first, and what they realized is when you do it, you actually like go lower over the jump, so you will actually save time by doing it because you're not going higher, you're sort of like cutting across, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's a very advanced skill. I've been doing it for what, 15 years, and I'm still not very good at it. I can do small little ones, but the pros are like insane at it, and it's very satisfying to watch when they do it.
Yeah, because I've never seen that before, and it almost looked like they were doing some sort of like trick shot on the jumps, like to like show off. But that makes sense. That's quite interesting. So, like, what would you say the environment was in terms of like, was it other like 7-year-old kids doing it with their parents like coming to watch? Like, what was it quite competitive? What would you say it was like?
I would say motocross is more laid back. It was a lot of like father and sons just like having a good time, and we would always have like a big campfire. Like everyone was like quite good friends and stuff, and it was quite a fun environment to be in. It was obviously competitive as well, but like it wasn't cutthroat like go-karting was, I would say.
Yeah, those videos we watched the other day of the motocross, like we saw some kids like end up fighting and stuff. Do you think you saw that a lot when like kids would end up fighting if they?
I think that's more Americans. They like,
Yeah.
I would say Americans are like probably the best at motocross in the world, really. Because every year there's like, it's called the MX of Nations, which is basically the World Cup of motocross, and they've won it the most out of any other nation, basically.
Okay, so they're like the peak pinnacle almost.
Yeah, so if you want to earn big money in motocross, you go to America, really, and that's where they do the racing inside of all like the football stadiums and the baseball stadiums.
Why do you think they're so much better than like Europe, for example?
I don't really know, really. I think it might be something to do with maybe like, I don't know, really. It's quite strange because we invented motocross, but I guess America are all about the show, aren't they? And
Yeah.
with those big stadiums, they can have like more people watching it than say if it was at a motocross track where you're quite limited to like viewing space.
My first thought would be like that because they're a lot more like liberal on like rules and regulations, that a lot more kids would be getting on super powerful bikes when they're younger, so they're like used to riding sort of like difficult bikes to ride.
It's definitely a redneck sport out there, I'd say. You wouldn't see like posh kids like riding motocross as much as like other people, but I guess with how big the country is as well, they can just like ride around their local woods. But if I was to go in the local woods, I would have a helicopter on me. So it's a
See,
lot different in that
so
retrospect, I suppose.
like with me and you, we're like from the same place. Like we live in like southeast London almost,
Yeah,
and but I've moved up north just for like an internship. But up here, you see so many like motorbikes and like quad bikes and stuff just everywhere. Like I live in a place called Huddersfield, and if you go to the local woods, like you'll see like 5-year-old kids riding like motocross motorbikes like on around the parks and stuff. Like it's quite
yeah.
normal. And the other day when I was doing a driving lesson, like I was at a red light waiting, and you just see like 100 like 15-year-old kids on motorbikes just tearing down the road and just not like respecting any traffic laws. And my driving instructor was like, "I'll just wait here. Like, don't go while these kids are like going crazy." I think it's like a big problem here is because like you see the police like chasing these kids about, and they're just razzing them
Yeah.
out, bro.
They do give it a bad name, I suppose, because a lot of people do buy motocross bikes for what they're meant for, and then the other half of the community just do wheelies and stuff like that, really, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. So the other thing that I was quite interested in is the karting. So you start when like what age did you start doing karting?
I was probably about 13 or 14. I'm not sure if you've heard of Butmore Park. It's quite a famous track, and they do like this series where you just pay like some amount of money and you use like the rental carts, and it's like a elimination system to get to like a final. I did that about 4 times and I was pretty good at that. So I think my dad might have thought, oh, if I buy him a proper go-kart, he might be the next Lewis Hamilton. But
Yeah.
we got quite a big reality check after quite like the first few races with the amount of money that was involved, because we was used to like father-son duos, and out of a 20 kart grid, there was only 3 of us that was father-sons, and then the rest of them were like rich, posh people that would like pay a proper team to like literally do everything for their kid.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy to think about, isn't it? I mean, when we went to Brands Hatch not too long ago, and we were watching some of like the races in like what it was like equivalent to like F4 cars. I think it was the F4 cars, but
Yeah,
like we went into where the pits were, and then like where they have all the tents where they pull in the cars later on, and you just see some of the drivers. They're literally like 13 years old, and it's just so kind of mad to think about how much money must be being spent to have them there.
it's crazy because if you know Formula 2, like F2, you have to pay £3 million to do a season. Like the drivers don't even earn any money; they just pay to
Wow.
like race. Basically, that's the problem with Formula One. Like someone could be more talented, but if someone else has more money, they have more of a chance to get into Formula One, which I think's a bit sad, really, because there's probably better race drivers out there that don't get the chance to actually prove themselves as much.
Yeah, because so many of the kids, well, not the kids, but so many of the people in F1 are just like kids of billionaires. Like you have like Lando Norris's dad's a billionaire. You've got Lance Stroll, like I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like just so many of them are just so ultra rich. It's almost like
Yeah, like Lance Stroll's the definition of what we're talking about, because he literally bought a whole Formula One team so his son would have a permanent seat in Formula One, even though people always like take the mickey out of him for it and stuff. Like he's still talented, but
yeah.
there could be someone better in that racing seat,
I think
really.
for me, yeah, Lance Stroll is the definition of it's almost like pay to win because if he was in any other car where his dad didn't own the team, he would have been kicked out so long ago.
Yeah,
Because the performance just isn't there. Like he doesn't do well in the season. He crashes so many cars, costs them so many millions into like repairs. It's just he's not and good enough.
he's been in Formula One since 2015 now, I think. He's
Is it?
been in it for 10 years now, or like 9 years or something. Because he started off in a Williams, and then his dad bought, do you remember Force India?
Yeah.
He like bought a big share in it, and then he eventually bought all of it, and then it turned into Aston Martin.
I think it was so smart to turn it into Aston Martin because I actually, even though I don't like Lance Stroll, I feel like Aston Martin is still a great car company, and also I really like the F1 team. I think was it the fact they had Fernando Alonso. So Fernando Alonso like won so many world championships in other teams, and then he's racing for Aston Martin. And I just feel like because they have him, it like actually brings some reputation to that team. Like if it was just Lance Stroll, it would just be a bit of a shit show.
Because they had Sebastian Vettel as well before him, who's like he's won the world championship 4 times, and he's like a very established driver.
Because imagine if it was Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso, that would be some ultra team.
Yeah, like the 2 goats going at it in their fees. Yeah. What's weird as well though, it's called Aston Martin, but nothing to do with the car is Aston Martin. It has a Mercedes engine, and it's literally just a sponsor. Like,
yeah, literally. I think I did see there's that great like aero engineer who's like worked for
Adrian Newey.
Yeah, he's worked for Red Bull for like the last 10 years, and pretty much every like dominating team for the last 30 years he has been like almost like the chief aero engineer on the team. So now is he going to Aston Martin now? I'm not actually sure.
He is. I'm pretty sure they offered him some big money, because there was rumors he might be going to Ferrari, which I thought from his perspective might have been the more interesting career move, because obviously Ferrari have such a big reputation in motorsport, but I guess the money came calling, so that's why he chose.
What did you think about Lewis Hamilton moving to Ferrari?
I understood it, because even though at the time Mercedes were probably better than Ferrari, I'm pretty sure any driver in the world would love to race for Ferrari Formula One team, because it's just such an iconic like team and like brand. And from Ferrari's perspective, they probably made a lot of money because of Lewis Hamilton's brand as well, being the biggest driver of all time, I would say.
Yeah, I think Lewis Hamilton definitely has the best brand in F1, just because of how I think his fashion has helped him quite a lot, to be fair.
I was going to say that, like, when he first started doing it, he got a lot of stick for it, but he's probably thinking in the future what he wants to do after Formula One, and it's grown him as a brand as well, and he's probably brought a lot of non-motorsport people into the sport, which has probably elevated the sport as well, because obviously more money the better. But
yeah, definitely, because there's that thing called the Met Gala, which I'm not entirely sure if it's an award show or if it's a fashion sort of week thing. I don't know much about that world, but I know that I did see that he's now on the board of the Met Gala.
What, he's like one of the top guys at it?
Yeah, he just got like a position there. So now, because I did see he always used to go and like show his like outfits there at the Met Gala, but now he's actually like one of the people in charge there.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so maybe after F1, he's going to be working in fashion, or you never know.
I'd say that's more than likely what he's going to do, because he's got like a collaboration with Tommy Hilfiger as well, hasn't he? So everywhere he goes, Tommy Hilfiger goes.
Interestingly, so Lance Stroll's dad, Lawrence Stroll, who owns the team, Lawrence Stroll also owns Tommy Hilfiger.
Is he actually? I did not know that.
Yeah. So maybe in the future you'll see some like Aston Martin collabs with Hamilton and Tommy Hilfiger or something. I don't know.
Because I noticed that Mercedes' new outfits are now Adidas and not Tommy Hilfiger, because obviously Lewis Hamilton left. Yeah.
No way. Fair. That's pretty interesting. So going back to karting a little bit. So because we're talking about Lewis Hamilton started in karting, and I think people kind of see the route to F1 as starting with karting. Like, if you can, most of the F1 drivers now prove themselves when they were like 5 to 10 years old in sort of like karting championships. Do you think that most people that you were karting with also wanted to get to F1 and they were there for that goal?
100%. Every kid's dreams to be a Formula One driver, but I will say it's definitely changed a lot since Lewis Hamilton, because I've seen some documentaries about his dad, and he had like 4 or 5 jobs to like make it work. And I definitely feel like he's the last generation where you could get into Formula One without a rich background. I feel like now you have to have the money straight away, whereas Lewis Hamilton was so good at go-karting, McLaren picked him up from an early age. I think he was like 13 or something. So he was go-karting with McLaren from a very young age, and then obviously developed into what he is now, because him and Rosberg were teammates throughout go-karting, and then they ended up being title rivals at Mercedes in like 2014, 2015 and stuff.
Yeah. What do you think about sim racing though? Because so explain for people who don't know what sim racing is. It's just like you have your own steering wheel at home with pedals, and then like you race like on tracks against other people, like on your computer almost in a way. But sim racing has got so good over the last few years that it almost accurately represents what it feels like to drive a real racing car. So you'll see a lot of people just doing sim racing on the side, like Max Verstappen, who's the current F1 world champion. He does sim racing all the time. Like, I think quite funnily, he'll have a F1 race the next day, and he'll stay up till like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. playing sim racing before his big race on the next
I
day.
find that so jokes that he has like a portable racing sim. Like he'll like take it all over the world with him, and if there's like a big sim racing thing, he'll literally do it the night before, and then the day after he's in an F1 car. But I think last year it came up that he did a sim race and then he had a dodgy race the next day because of maybe lack of sleep or whatever. And then Red Bull were like, "Yeah, you can't do this anymore."
Yeah, too much on the line.
Yeah,
See,
he's
I think it's interesting
prioritizing
with
sim
Lewis
racing.
Hamilton because Lewis Hamilton refuses to use the sim, and that's quite different, isn't it?
I guess that's like age as well. Like I'm sure a lot of younger drivers practice at home because they can get an idea of like maybe they're going to a new track and they want to learn the track before they get there. And that's definitely a benefit. But some for like Lewis Hamilton, he might prefer the real feel of the car because realistically, you only feel stuff through your hands, and he might prefer like obviously when you're in a real car, you have like the motion of the actual car, the G forces and everything. So it might be different in that respect for him because he hasn't grown up with it or something like that.
Yeah, I suppose. Do you think, you were mentioning before about how you think that not many people who are from a poorer background will be able to get into racing in the future. Do you think that perhaps sim racing could allow a new opportunity for people that aren't rich to get into Formula One or most?
It's definitely a lot harder, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. Like, say iRacing, for example, if you're like the very best driver at iRacing, which is very hard to do, like I'm sure you would get noticed by teams. And if you started doing esports in that, some might think, oh, this guy might have the potential to be good in a real car. But I
Mm.
don't think with sim racing you'll never be in Formula One, but GT3 racing definitely
Mm.
and stuff like that because it's with the licenses you have to go through F3, F2. You have to do that to be a Formula One driver.
Yeah, so
But
talk to us through the super. You need like a super license. And talk us through like what those are.
I don't know exactly how it works, but I know there's a point system and you need a certain amount of points to get a super license, which is the license required for Formula One, and that is like the pinnacle license for motorsport. But like going back to like endurance racing as well, I think you need a super license for the hypercars
Yeah.
because they're not as fast as Formula One, but they used to be very close, but they're not as fast now. But
Mm.
I think it was 5 years ago, there was a Porsche that actually did this a lap of Spa faster than Lewis Hamilton's pole position lap, where it's just made like weird to think about.
Yeah, that as well. Do you think so? In karting, you started. How long did you do it for? And you mentioned that it was like a reality check when we first started because almost like all the kids were spending so much money. Out of curiosity, how much money did you spend in karting, and how much do you think they were spending in karting like per year?
So I started in 2016 and my dad bought a 2008 kart. So if we compare that to bike racing, it's more about the rider than the bike. But with karting, the kart makes a big difference. So I remember in my first race, I was on this big straight going flat out and I just see them pulling away from me. And from that moment, I realized my go-kart was not up to their standards. And it
Yeah.
was just a big like reality check for my dad because it was like, okay, we need to like upgrade the engine. And we spent about £4,000 overhauling this older engine. And it was a lot faster, but it still wasn't as good as these guys because I'm pretty sure my dad told me that these parents are spending 80 to £100,000 a year
Wow.
to like get the training, the car, and they would have new tires for every session. And then me and my dad was using the same set of tires for like 3 race meetings, so it was definitely at a big disadvantage. But I remember one wet race, it was like between wet and dry,
Mm.
and we put the wet tires on, and I actually finished like 8th out of 20 drivers, and that was
Oh
my
my.
best result purely because it was like down to the skill at that race. But if it was a dry race, I was always pretty much fighting at the back. I'm not gonna lie, there was just a fight at the back of the grid. And after about 2 or 3 years, I said to my dad, like, I appreciate everything that you've done here, but the amount of money we're spending and it's just not really going to go anywhere, sort of thing.
Mm.
So we kind of packed it up after that, and I just went back to the bikes after that because I did enjoy it, but it just gets a bit demoralizing knowing that no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be able to win, sort of thing. And as a competitive person, you want to win, and it's just,
It's frustrating.
yeah, it's frustrating. So
Yeah, I get that. But what I don't understand is how they can have such different engines. Sure, surely there's some sort of limit on how powerful you can make the engine. You can't just keep like getting better and better. How does it work?
I don't know the full regulations, but you can like buy an engine and then get it forged. So it basically means it's stronger, which means it can produce more power as well.
Mm.
And these teams wouldn't just have one engine, so they would have like 3 engines. So if one was to blow up, they just bang another engine straight in.
Yeah,
So it's just that's what I mean with the car, and it's like you literally have to have the money to be the best, really.
yeah,
Like you
definitely.
can't just do it on a tight budget, really. That's why I think you see other people my age went into like mini racing, like Mini Coopers, which is probably more budget friendly because there's like tighter rules on to like make it more fair. Go-karting was like, yeah, just best kart, best everything. No rules against that. It would just be like certain things about weight and stuff like that. You had to like meet a minimum weight requirement.
Yeah, I go to. I've told you a little bit about this before, but I go to a school every Tuesday and help out with their like DT class, and they're making a race car that has like an electric motor and brakes and like a speed controller inside, and then they've all got a whole body they've made as well, and like sort of a chassis too. And then they enter an endurance race every year, so it's like a 2 hour endurance race where the kids have to like the kids drive it, and then they'll come and pit and switch drivers and whatnot. But obviously, as you can imagine, you get a wide range of cars because the school I go to is just a normal state school, and like the budget is pretty good, to be fair. I mean, they get new batteries every race, and like the D Teach has amazing equipment. Like he's got welding equipment, like there's so much stuff. But you've got other kids that go to private schools whose dads work at like Aston Martin, and they're actually using like the wind tunnel to test the error of these kids' like little race car. And so obviously they're like running simulations and like testing the bodywork and making it the most aerodynamic as possible. So it's just the skill difference is so massive. Well, not even the skill, but just the amount of money you spend as how good you can make the car in a way.
Motorsport has definitely become a numbers sport as well. I'd say, like with, like you said, like the wind tunnels and stuff like that. Like back in the day, you would just put an engine in like basically like 4 wheels of a slim little body, and it was just like a lot different back to how it is now, where you have to like make aerodynamics and like think about all like the little things and like all the data sheets, the telemetry. And that was another thing with karting as well. Like I'll just do my laps, come in after a race, and that would be it. These teams, they would have like data where they're braking, where they're accelerating, and they would be like, oh, you need to like brake a little bit later and accelerate a bit earlier.
Yeah.
All I could do is just watch from the side and just like
Your dad
try
on
and
his phone like this.
yeah, I would just like watch like the older people race and be like, oh, he's turning a bit earlier, so I'll try that next time. Or
Yeah.
like if I'm behind someone that's fast, I'll just like try and copy what they do. So there's definitely when it comes to data, like you can be faster with data now as well, which like back in the day it was just all feel.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Was there any time where like you were scared in racing? Like, was there ever because like we talked about in the future how it would be so fun to like get a race car like we'd both buy it between me and you, and like go to races and like pit and switch drivers and whatnot. And to me, I think it's really fun. But obviously, I've never actually done proper racing. Like we've been go-karting and stuff, but like you've been doing racing since you were 5 years old. So for you, maybe you might not have as much fear, but has there been any times where it felt quite like scary or anything?
I wouldn't say fear, but when you're sitting on the grid with the race about to go, like I've had, there's no other feeling describing it. The way your heart feels and your body feels tense, like, you know, it's about to go down sort of thing. And it's
Yeah, yeah.
like, it's a weird just like feeling to describe, but it really gets you in the zone sort of thing. And like, it gets to the point where like, you're sort of shaking with like excitement. Cause
Yeah.
like, and when it comes to fear, I would say it's mainly motocross. Say you go to a new track and there's a massive jump. The first time you're doing that jump, you're just like wide open. You're like, please, please, like, can I clear it and not crash? So I'd say go-karting, I didn't really have any fear because it's, yeah, you're just driving around on the flat surface. But with motocross, I'd definitely say it's more scary with certain like jumps and even those ruts, like you might like get twisted in them and then you just get launched off the bike and you just like hit the deck sort of thing. So yeah, I'll definitely say
Was there any times you had any big crashes or?
I've definitely had a few. I've actually never broken a bone, but I bruised my shoulder really badly. I came off a jump and it like it's called a kicker where as the day goes on, like the lip of the jump has like a little lip to it. And as I went up it, it like sent my bike into a nosedive and I had to like jump off the front of the bike and I just like landed on the ground. But
Wow.
you just get used to it sort of thing.
I think the scary bit about that as well is obviously when you crashed on the track, there's still other people racing behind you, so they're coming at you while you know you're just there, like sitting duck.
That's the thing with the adrenaline flowing, you don't even think that I'm hurt. The first thing you're thinking is get out the way. Like you don't want to get landed on, so you just like try and crawl to the side as quickly as you can, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean those are when I see like big crashes in motorsport, they always happen where you have the initial crash. And then the drive, like let's say there's like a sharp bend and someone's had a crash, and then you always can't see there's a crash ahead, so another car is just coming full speed, and then they'll just completely crash into someone that's sitting still. Those are always like the mega crashes that you sort of see that are so dangerous.
That's another thing with safety these days. Like back in the day, there would only be like a marshal at the side with a yellow flag, but now they have like radio communication, like oh, there's a crash on turn 6, be careful, or even in some sports, they have like flags in their car. So if they're on a certain bit of the track, it'll have like a yellow flag in the car. So they'll know that they need to slow down for that portion of the track.
Yeah, safety has improved so much. Even that school that I go to every Tuesday, we have a whole list of regulations that we need to abide by, like in terms of like electrical safety to make sure there's no like short circuit the wires or how that we have like it's not a halo as in like F1, but it's sort of like this halo that goes up behind your head, so if the car flips over, you won't, like your neck is protected. There's loads of things you need to abide by. I think in F1 to show sort of like how amazing the safety has come, there was that crash a few years ago with Roman Grosjean where he had a head-on, front-on collision with a metal barricade, like going 300 kilometers an hour, just at a crazy speed. And then there was an ignition, like the oil from the engine, like completely went up in flames. Like it was a massive explosion. And he got out and he was unharmed, like apart from some minor burns on his hand. And it was just so unreal. Like his car was just absolutely shredded to bits, but he was completely safe.
I remember watching that live, and out of all the times I've watched Formula One, I would say in our lifetime, the safety's been pretty good, but that's been the one time where I've actually like stood up watching the TV. I'm like, oh, is this guy actually all right? Because as a racer, you know that's a big incident, and you know like as soon as you see the fire and that, if he can't get his seatbelt undone and get out, like it is game over. But yeah, he got out and he was all right, which is if that was like 20, 30 years ago, that would probably be death on impact, really.
Yeah, even like even pre-Halo, I feel like he probably wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, even pre-Halo, like with the way he went through that crash barrier, that was probably straight to the face, I would imagine, because he was like wedged underneath it, wasn't he?
Yeah, just absolutely unreal.
The only death in recent times in Formula One was, do you know someone called Jules Bianchi?
I've heard the name, but I never watched racing when he was in.
So it was at Suzuka, it was a safety car, and there was a tractor out on the track. Like, Yeah, there was a tractor on the track picking up a crashed car, and he lost control and crashed into the tractor. And if there was a halo, he probably would have survived. But because obviously how low a Formula One car is and what a tractor's like, he probably just crashed into the back of it, and that was it for him. But they didn't televise it because I think they instantly knew that he was probably dead, unfortunately.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, because the halo, it's just obviously around your head like this. And there was like even that incident. I think when it was I think maybe 2021 when you had Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton fighting for the championship, and it was such a small incident, but somehow I think Max Verstappen's car got completely on top of Lewis Hamilton, and if that halo wasn't there, it would have completely crushed his head.
Yeah, I remember that at Monza as well.
Yeah,
There's been a few instances where the halo has definitely saved some drivers where the cars just, because obviously open wheel racing, if the wheels lock, it just bounces up, and then if it's like comes across you and that's it really. So the halo's definitely been a big improvement safety wise. Because I remember when they was testing it, people were like, oh, it ruins the look of the cars. It's not. It takes the danger out of the sport, but realistically, it's still a dangerous sport. Like they're putting their lives on the line still, even though the cars are very safe. It's like going 300 miles an hour around a corner. Like the downforce of these cars is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, unreal. I always it's quite interesting how F1 drivers have to train for each season and as they're going, like the exercises they have to do. Like you'll see them, they'll get like a big metal plate with straps and put it around their neck, and they'll do like neck exercises because the G-force as you go around a corner is so high that your neck is like being strained outwards.
I remember for my 16th birthday, my mum bought me like an F1 two-seater car experience. And this guy wasn't even pushing. He was just like doing like just like sort of normal laps around this track. And I just remember like trying to like go around these corners, and even then just like the neck strain for like after 10 minutes, I was absolutely dead, and I was just a passenger. So these guys doing that for like 45 minutes, like it's just absolutely insane, really.
Yeah, it must be so intense because they have to, as well, they lose so much body weight in like water loss, like from sweating. So they'll lose like 4 kg from just water, like sweating.
Yeah. I remember as well, like when I was going to the gym a lot and I was weighing myself every day, I went motocross this one time in the summer. And I came back and weighed myself, and I lost 2 kilograms from how much I sweated from just like riding the bike all day. Yeah. So I'm saying with motocross, like it's physical in a different sense. Like this thing called arm pump, where the bike's going like this, if you hold onto the handlebars too tight, your forearms literally seize up and your hands are stuck in a position like this. And it's extremely painful.
Wow.
But the only way to get better at that is going every week. So because I don't go every week now, it's every time I go on the track, I experience it because your body's not used to it. But
is it just like the next day you can't even use your arms because they're just so dead?
It's not even the next day. It's when you're on the bike. Like you'll be riding for like 15 minutes and all of a sudden your arms just get so tense from when you're holding on so tight.
Wow.
So you have to like consciously remember to have a loose grip, which is a bit weird because obviously you want to hold on tight to not get flung off. So it's like a fine balance between holding on tight but not too tight to where your like muscles seize up.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't a direct comparison, or not really anyway risky as racing, but I do like bike deliveries, like food deliveries as a second job on my e-bike. And the potholes in the UK are so bad that like sometimes I'll just be, if I'm not proper paying attention, kind of just cycling like relaxed, and I'm not really looking at the road in terms of the potholes, I'm not looking down, I'll just go over the biggest pothole and it almost like flings me off my bike. I've got a proper like grab to make sure I don't go flying. Like, it's always quite concerning.
With motocross as well, like obviously my bike's completely standard, but with these like pro bikes, like the suspension setup's worth like £40,000 on these pro bikes, and they can like, compared to my bike, if I was to send some of these jumps to flat, my bike would like land, fully compress, and then bounce and fling me off. But because these bikes are so well tuned with the suspension, they can literally handle so much brute force, and like the riders know that they can like send this jump to flat and they'll be okay. But if I was to do it, I would probably like break my ankles or something.
Yeah.
So it's like
you have your own motorbike now that's not like for racing, but you just kind of go dry places on it. What is driving on UK roads, would you say, on like your motorbike? What's it like?
It can be sketchy, I
Yeah.
must admit. Like I did a bike trip in France, and the comparison is so like the roads in France are beautiful. You can ride about, not worry about the road, and just enjoy the ride. When I'm riding about in London, I have to factor in oil on the roads, potholes, and there's like little crevices. So if you like get your like wheel like stuck in a crevice and you're trying to turn, it might catch you. And like say it's rained, you know the white lines on the road,
Yeah.
they're extremely slippery, and you have to be very careful of the white lines and drains as well.
Yeah.
There was one time I was going around a corner and there was a drain there, and the whole bike just slipped for like a millisecond as I went over the drain. So,
God.
and obviously you got to worry about people not checking their mirrors and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So riding a bike is treating everyone like an idiot, basically. You have to
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
think everyone is brain dead just to stay alive, really. But
100%. I mean, because obviously I'm on my e-bike a lot, and I just feel it's so sketchy. Because you're basically so aware that everyone around you is on a big metal box that's going really fast, and you're on basically just fully exposed. So it's like,
I hate cycling for that reason. Like I always take care overtaking cyclists because just cycling on a road with cars coming past you, impatient people, like you are literally a sitting duck on a bicycle.
mate, there has been so many dodgy drivers that I've been on my e-bike. Like they'll get really impatient, even though there's no room to overtake, and they'll overtake and they'll like brush my shoulder. That's how close they go. It's just, you do get absolute idiots, and the thing is as well, what's worse about it is when they get so impatient that they want to overtake, they don't just do it slowly and go around you. They'll proper razz it because they're trying to prove a point, that they're so angry, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to go past the car. And they go so fast that it's like, it's even more dangerous than if they just
I
overtake.
remember cycling as a child as well, like the wind as it goes past, you get like blown to the side. And like, even on my motorbike, like I've been on the motorway before, overtaken lorries and stuff. And like, with the aerodynamics of a lorry, you'll be going past it, then all of a sudden you just get smashed by like some like just like the wind of the lorry, where like the aerodynamics and stuff, and it's like holding on for dear life and stuff like that. So it's like I don't think people that have never ridden a bicycle or a motorbike take that into consideration, where the wind of their car can like blow you across the road and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. And I didn't take it that seriously, but now I do, because for the wind. Because when I remember not too long ago, maybe a month ago, there was a proper storm here, and I was like, you know what? It's just windy. It's not raining or anything. I'll go out and do deliveries. And I go out, and the wind was so strong that I'd be cycling in a straight line. And bear in mind that I'm quite a heavy guy. I'm like 93, 94 kg on my bike. So you would think that the weight of it would keep it going straight. But the wind was so strong that it would proper take you like a half a meter either way. It's just blowing you about. And I was like, this is so dangerous right now, because if a car goes past and the wind just blows me into them, it's just not safe. So I was like, I'll just go home. But it's definitely something to take in mind, the safety
Yeah.
with the wind, because it is so powerful.
I remember being at this track in Brighton on my motocross bike, and it was one of the days of wind warnings. It was like 30 or 40-mile-an-hour winds. This track's on like the top of a hill as well.
Mm.
And going over the jumps, you'll like go off, like take off in the middle, and then the wind just blows you to the side, and then you land at a completely different spot. And when you're in the air, you just feel the wind pushing you to the side. It's such a weird sensation, because like if you was to say go side by side with someone during a race or something, and the wind's pushing to the right and you're on the left of the jump, it could literally just blow you off the track. So you have to like really like consider all of like the weather and stuff when you're riding as well.
It is, yeah, it's wild, isn't it? So I want to move on to what you do now. So do you want to tell me about what you do now, and then we'll kind of get into like what you're hoping to take it in the future?
Is this with my painting stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
So my history of jobs is quite strange. So COVID happened. I was meant to get an IT apprenticeship. That fell through because of COVID. So I was looking at car related jobs, because COVID made me realize I do not want to sit at a desk my whole life. I want to have a hands-on job. So I was looking at car related jobs, and to be honest, mechanic is bottom of the barrel, really. It's not very well paid. I didn't want to do that. So I started looking at other things and I stumbled across painting and it paid very well. So I applied for this job at Aviva and I didn't hear back for them. 3 years later, when I'm doing plumbing, I got a reply from them and I was like, you know what, even though it's a big pay cut,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it because I can see myself doing that for a while. Because if I feel like if you have a passion for something, like waking up every day for your work is just better really than I've got to drive all the way to Birmingham to change someone's toilet tomorrow. Like, so when I thought about it like that, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. So when I first started, because the painting side of things is quite technical, I just do the prep work. So you start off with like, say you've got a repair on a front door, you can't just paint the door that needs repairing. You have to do a blend on either side. So you do the wing and the back door, because if you was just to paint the repair door, basically it's very hard to color match perfectly to what the car is, especially if it's like 5 years old or something. So if you was to paint it, it would literally stick out like a sore thumb and it looks like a bad job. So you basically use very fine grit to take the lacquer off the other doors. And when you paint it, you would only put the color on half of the other door. So when you then put the clear coat on, it looks like a nice job and the colors all blend in with each other. So that.
So is it like, because I didn't know this before you were sort of telling me about it a while ago, that you have like a multiple layers of paint on a car. You don't just paint like, you don't just put on one layer. There's like
Yeah.
layers.
So say I get a new job over from a panel beater, so they do all like the filler work. I do small bits of filler, but they do like the big repairs and they'll like shape the filler and stuff. So from that stage, I would have to feather out the repair and then put high build on the repair, which is basically a type of primer that you can like use a block to like shape it and mold it. And then after that, it's called wet and wet. So then you wet and wet it, so the whole panel is primer. And then after that, you put base coat on, which is the color. And then after that, it's called clear coat, which gives the paint the shiny finish. But it's not originally, it was only shiny because it's to protect the paint from the sun, like UV and like stone chips and stuff like that. And obviously, as technology evolved, you see cars with like matte paint and stuff like that as well.
Do you have an idea of like your ultimate goal with this? Like, can you imagine yourself like having your own like painting company where like you paint cars?
So
Or what would you like to do?
I have a few options. That's why I got into it. So there's not as much money in it, but I would for a little bit like to work in like a custom body shop where it's like all modified cars. Like sounds like I've just finished this build. I want to like change the color and like do a nice paint job. So there's that option, and there's airbrushing where, you know, like with like helmets and stuff, you get all like the details and designs on it. So like that's an option as well, what I would like to do maybe. And there's this thing called smart repairs where you basically in a van go to someone's house and they might have like a small bit of damage on the bumper or something, and you basically paint it on their driveway.
Yeah.
And the only reason I would consider that is because that's where the big money is really. If I was to like get my own van and stuff, because you can charge call out fees, charge more labor and stuff. So that's where like the big money is, but that is a lot of hours. So there's a lot of opportunities really, and I haven't fully decided what I'm going to do yet after my apprenticeship.
And based on our discussions earlier, where we were talking about how there's so much money in motorsport and in cars, and people are willing to spend, even on their kids, you know, like 13-year-old kids, they're willing to spend like hundreds of thousands of pounds a year on those cars. I can imagine that people are also very willing to spend a lot of money on the paint job of their car too.
Yeah, so at my college, I've got a mate that works at a restoration garage. So he's like worked on like Aston Martin DB5s, which are worth like millions of pounds. And like this guy's like, I want you to make it look like and run like it's literally come out of the factory when it was brand new. So people was like, people with those sort of cars will literally, they'll be like, I don't care how much it costs. I just want this done. So like when it comes to that, people just overcharge because they know like that person is willing to pay whatever it takes to get what they want, basically.
I think in terms of all the cars I see, like the paint color that I love the most, that I feel like is quite unique, is on the BMWs. Like you have this like space gray, sort of like light gray color, and I just feel like it looks so modern. I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like when the iPhones first brought out their space gray, and I just remember when I saw that space gray on iPhones when it first came out, I was like, that looks so like unique and modern. And when I see these BMWs, I always think, like, I want one in that color. That looks amazing.
Things though, like if I'm gonna say my opinion, I think that's one of the worst colors because you know when I'm talking about primer,
Yeah,
it looks like someone's just put primer on a car and be like, yeah, I'm not gonna put any color on it. I'm just gonna leave it like that. That like job done, half job. But I can see why people. I think it does look nice on certain cars, but there's definitely been a trend where everyone wants that color.
yeah.
I think Porsche were the first people to do it, and then they realized a lot of people like that color, so it's kind of evolved from there. When it comes to unique colors as well, like like porcelain colors where from one angle it looks blue and then you could walk around the car and it looks purple, that paint is extremely expensive. So if you had a car with that on it and you was to say damage the door, you can't just paint the door because it would ruin the whole look of the car. You have to repaint the whole car to keep. So yeah, if you was to do that, like if you buy the car, it would look purple from that angle, but if you was to say do that repair from that angle, the whole car could look purple, but the door's in the green stage, and then if you was to walk around it, it might be green and the door looks purple. So you have to do the whole car for it to like have that weird color effect, if that makes sense.
So do you think that's why so many people that have these super expensive cars just never take them out? Because it's almost like even one little scratch, you've got to redo the whole paintwork in a way.
With scratches, like it depends on how deep the scratch is. You might be lucky to where you can just polish it out and then it will look good as new. But if it's a very deep scratch, you'll have to like obviously repaint it and stuff. I don't blame these people with these like collectors' cars. Like these billionaires will just have like a massive garage. Like Jay Leno's just got like 50 cars in this garage and they're literally just collector's items. They're not there to be driven. They're just there to like appreciate, basically.
It's so satisfying. I mean, I've talked about like me being from an engineering background. Like I feel like I would love a garage where I can have my car in there and just loads of different engineering equipment and like tools, and I can work on loads of different things. I think that would be like a dream little setup. But then you can also have like sofas in there, and things like that. Like I think that would be amazing to have in my house on order.
Because I'm the sort of guy, like, with my dad's bike, if I didn't want to ride it and I wanted it as a collector's item, I would literally, like, find a way to have it as a chandelier in my living room or something, like, hanging from the ceiling. Like, hopefully got to find a wife that approves that, but,
Yeah,
like, I would, yeah.
I was round one of my friend's houses the other day, well, my girlfriend's friend, but so we're in Denmark and we're in his house, and he has a massive like flat screen TV, like on the wall, and then he had a nice bike, and he decided to put his bike hanging above the TV, and then the other day the whole frame, like the support frame, just completely broke, and the TV crashed onto, or the bike crashed onto the TV, and it just completely destroyed it. That was so bad.
I can imagine. So when you do that sort of stuff, you have to like make like over time as well. You have to like maybe check it and like or just like weld it or something because you just don't want that to happen, do you? Just
Literally.
like
I think he was silly. I don't even think he used enough screws for the frame, for this in the wall to support the frame.
that's why I feel like maybe a chandelier option might be a bit better if you have like a big metal plate or something and like have like proper bolts and stuff like that. I wouldn't trust like tiny little screws for like a whole motorbike holding up in like your living room or something.
Yeah. So we're coming towards an end. I think the last thing I wanted to talk about was, in an ideal world, like what are your dreams in the future with motorsport? Like, would you get your own race car? Like, what would be ideal for you in the future? Let's say,
I can keep chopping and changing my mind, but say me and you, if we like had the money to like do endurance racing, that is definitely what I would do. But if I was by myself, I think I would go into more motorbikes because you haven't ridden a motorbike, but I've never felt more alive than riding a motorbike. There's just something about riding a motorbike that is so free and so like exhilarating. So even if it was just for fun, I reckon I would like get like maybe an R1 or something and like do like small championships around the country or something. But with that as well, if I was to like move to say Australia, my favorite racetrack Bathurst, like I would just like I wouldn't buy a motorbike but for Bathurst. I would like buy a car and just do track days.
Yeah, because there's a lot of options. Like, I was looking at the other day where there's like loads of different classes you can enter. Like me and you could pay like £70,000 for a whole year, like split between us, and then you get to do like 10 races in a championship where we both like get to drive after pitting. I feel like that would be, if we didn't have enough money to buy like a 500k GT3 car, so we could do like something like that. I feel like that'd be so fun.
Definitely as well. And it's like with the money side of things, I think it would be quite cool as well if we was both the engineers and stuff. Like we set up the car, we prep everything. Like we don't. It's just me and you, like just racing. And I feel like that is the most purest form of racing, where everyone there is just there to have a good time and stuff. Instead of like with GT3 racing, it's still somewhat competitive because you pay these teams and you still have to like organize sponsors and all of that. Like it's a lot more involved compared to where it's just you and your mate like having a bit of fun.
Yeah, definitely. We just need to try and not crash the car.
It was like a few years ago, I did this thing called the Western Beach Race where I paid £600 to do a 3 hour endurance race on this beach. And in this race, there's 1,000 dirt bikes on the beach. And it was like the most insane thing I've ever done. And it was so good. And I remember just like how this track was is like a mile straight across the beach. And then there's like massive sand dunes. And like you can imagine with 1,000 people trying to get up this dune, there's just people falling off everywhere and stuff. And you're like, trying to like maneuver your way through without getting taken out and stuff like that. So I reckon in the future everything's just like for a bit of fun. I don't want it to be too competitive to where if something does go wrong you're getting annoyed about it. It's just you're all there to have a good time sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. With the that sand race one, did everyone start all 1,000 at the same time? Was there a delay? Like,
So how the start is, all the bikes are in like this like car park, if you will. And you're all standing at this gate, and then when like the race starts, they open this gate and you have to run to your bike. And then if you get to your bike first, like you're having to like ride through other people running to their bikes, so you're like riding towards people whilst they're running towards you and stuff. It was so insane. Like it was such a good experience because I remember as well, me and my dad got there an hour before the race, and for some reason they made the racers park in the same car park as the spectators, and there was no car parks left, so we had to go to a mall car park. And I was pushing my motocross bike through a mall, and like it was like 15 minutes till the race started, so I'm like running with my bike to get to the start line through a mall, and all these people are just doing their shopping. Like, what the hell is this guy doing? He's running with a motocross bike through the shopping mall. But like, I literally got to the start line out of breath after pushing my bike for like 15 minutes, and then the race begun. So it was quite mental, really.
wow. Yeah, that sounds like absolute mayhem. That's brilliant. I love that. All right, cool. Well, Brandon, we've come to an end now, but that was really fun. Like, I had a good chat. And
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and hopefully when you come back to London this summer, we can go and watch some races, or maybe even do some racing and go karts for a bit of fun or something.
absolutely. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, you too.